Mayor Norton? Here. Councilmember Steinberg?
Here.
Councilmember Rorich?
Here.
Councilmember White?
Here.
Councilmember Whittington?
Okay. Thank you for that. At this point, I will open up for public comments. You get 3 minutes to speak. If you're here for something that is not on the agenda, feel free to come up now. State your name and address. Going once, going twice. All right, I'll close the public comment. So council, before us, we have our agenda. There's a couple of additions to the agenda. First one would be Resolution 2023-12. This is appointing Christopher Willett to the Eagle Lake Fire Department active roster. And a second one I just added here for you guys. This was not in your packet either. This is a letter from Region 9 asking for someone to be appointed to the Region 9 Development Commission. So if we can add those to new business, that would be great. So do I have a motion to accept the agenda?
I'll second.
All right, Jennifer, if I'm keeping this up for you, then. Okay. So Councilmember White moved and Councilmember Rourke seconded the motion. Am I saying that right, Rourke? Okay. Got it. I haven't screwed up yet, so I want all of you guys out here quizzing me and looking for it. All right, so any discussion on the agenda? Okay, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Okay, next on the agenda would be the approval of the meeting minutes. We have a motion to accept the minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, we have the motion, Councilmember White and Councilmember Rourke seconded. Any discussion on the minutes? Okay, hearing none. Actually, I do have a discussion item. I'm going to abstain on this one since I did not participate. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I am abstaining. Okay, motion carries. Next item, consent agenda. A couple notes on consent agenda. One item is resignation of Officer Tyler Wellert. Another item on there to discuss would be the mayoral appointments. I think you have all had a chance to discuss this and take a look at the appointments, and want to thank you all for stepping up and taking on the committees that you are doing. We also have Tom Paulson, appointment to Planning and Zoning, and then we also have a grant from Compeer. I want to say thank you to them for allowing us that grant to buy the Rescue Lift airbags. So, do we have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. All right, and then I think we are on to presentations. All right, first one up on presentation, Luke Israelson from KJ Walk. Thank you for being here tonight.
Good evening. This is Luke with KJ Walk. Just coming in to discuss the issue of the escrow agreement that we had for work that we did over the summer. And last meeting, you guys had decided, the council at the time, it sounds like we have a couple new council members and a new mayor. Congratulations. They had decided to go ahead and retain approximately $46,000 of our escrow for work to be done next year, and not as escrow, but to actually just take the money and hire an outside contractor to do additional work next year. So trying to get clarification on that. I was never informed that was a possibility or anything prior to the last meeting, otherwise I would have attended to have the discussion. I don't see $46,000 as being a representative number for the work that was mentioned in the December 2nd letter from Bolton and Mink on what's outstanding out there. Also, the items mentioned on the agreement itself have actually all been completed. So it seems to me like I should be getting all the money back anyways. If there are still things in the boulevard that need work to be addressed, we can look at that in the spring when it's not covered by 3 feet of snow and figure out a workable solution. But $46,000 is just entirely too much money for that. So that is where I'm at. I'm asking to have you guys reconsider the $46,000 that you decided was forfeited at the last meeting.
Well, you know, you say everything's done, and we're getting word that it's not sufficient work to be done. So I'm just, you know, there is a contract in place, correct, Jennifer? So within that contract, that's what we're going by, which is why we made that decision. Do you have pictures? Do you have, you know, anything to show us that the things that we're being told that isn't done, that you know, that it is done? Because if not, I mean, a contract's a contract, right?
Yeah, so we did the pond corrections. My understanding is that was all okayed aside from some castings that are missing on structures. And that was a different project from the previous year that the city had signed off on as being completed. So, I mean, I'm willing to put the castings on there, but I was never made aware that they were missing in the first place. So that's one issue. Cleaning out an outlet structure, I think, was mentioned. And then the other thing is the boulevards along the sidewalks. I didn't personally inspect the boulevards after they were done. I know we graded out the subgrade. There was dirt left at the end. We used that to backfill the boulevards, and then we had a company come in and hydromulch or hydroseed the boulevards so that in the spring that'll grow in with vegetation. Evidently wasn't done satisfactorily, but I was never notified of that. I asked October 11th for the escrow to be released. I didn't get any response to that until my office asked again in November for the release of the escrow, at which time then we were told they're looking into it and we were put on the agenda. I didn't get a copy of Brian's letter prior to the city council meeting. I actually didn't get a copy of that until I complained about the fact that $46,000 was kept after the fact. So the communication has not been stellar in terms of what the expectations or anything were. But as far as the wear course was installed, the gate valve was repaired, the sidewalks were installed, and the pond corrections, all the grading was done, and all the erosion control associated with the pond grading has been completed. I spent well in excess of the budgeted numbers for the wear course and sidewalks, because last year construction prices went through the roof. Scheduling was also virtually impossible. I requested that the work be started early in August. Obviously didn't get done till early October, so it took over 2 months after I requested for the work to be done for the contractor to come in and do the work. The work that I had control over, which was the pond corrections, I brought in my own equipment, my own guys. We did all of that work. That was done prior to the deadline. So everything that I physically had control of scheduling on, I did get done. So the boulevards, I guess, I didn't come down and inspect them myself, so I don't know. I don't have pictures or anything to show you.
I mean, Jennifer has some photos up here, and I can tell you that I think it was prior to the November meeting. I know before snow falls and stuff. I mean, we were out walking. I drove that way before council meeting when I knew this was part of the agenda and looked at it, and makes it look good, to be honest with you. And that was, nothing's changed besides snow's on it now. some fear comes in of a stroller going off the curb. If they're not paying attention, it'll roll the stroller. I mean, it's not good. So I will say, I was one of them that said, no, we need to hold some amount. What does it cost to get it good? You know, I think we've been asking a lot, when's the wear course going on? When's the sidewalks? I mean, I feel like you talk about lack of communication from our end to you. All summer, we've been asking for things, asking for communication. I mean, it makes, what isn't done on your development makes the city look bad, not you. They're coming to us saying, hey, we wanna build, and punch list items aren't done. So we're saying no, but we're the bad guys when the developer's not getting their stuff done. So I'm in full support of holding the amount, the money, because it's not done. This is not to city specifications, in my opinion. The amount, yeah, I mean, 46,000 is high, but what we talk about is what does it cost to fix this? What does it cost to get it to city code, what city would expect and want? We just finished agency and residents are complaining because there's glass in it, there's big boulders in it, there's concrete remnants in it. I physically saw that on the top surface. That's not good black soil for what hydro seed was put down. Frankly, you wasted money putting hydro seed down because it's not gonna grow. So I asked, what is it gonna cost to do this? So if it's not done, do you have an estimate saying, okay, you guys say it's not done, this is what it's gonna cost me, can you hold 20,000 of what it's gonna cost to get done and give me the rest? Do you know what it's gonna cost to fix what was not done in the city's eyes?
Yeah, I guess, I don't have an exact number for you. I don't know how much of it needs to be redone, anything like that.
In my opinion, wherever the sidewalk is.
Okay, yeah, I mean, this is not a finished yard either. These are vacant lots. So the builders will come in and tune all that stuff up when they build.
But what happens between now and the lot being sold? Because people are walking on it. People are using the sidewalks. Well, if they're plowed right now, I don't know. But residents walk on it. It's a nice loop to walk. But if it's not, if there's weeds growing in it and there's very uneven where people are gonna have a trip hazard, whether someone lives there or not, that's still an issue.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine it's not that much area. I know it's a long stretch, but it's only one skid loader bucket wide, so.
I guess that's my concern is we haven't had good communication from this whole thing going back years, in my opinion, since I've been on council. And we finally got your attention when we said you can have your money back for everything that you did do. So you can have back 100 and some thousand, but not that 46. Now we got your attention. Now you're like, wait a minute.
Well, I've been communicating with Jennifer all the way through. I mean, if you want, I can certainly add you guys onto the communications. So, I mean, I tried to keep her up to date on scheduling with WW Blacktopping and the concrete guys. And I mean, I asked them for schedules, and I gave the estimated schedules to Jennifer, and then as things were updated, I would update them. I know it wasn't ideal because it took a while, but I mean, I didn't print it all off, but I could bring emails and stuff to show what communication happened.
I will say that, you know, I obviously don't have the historical context that either of you do on this. I'm very new here, as we know. Yeah. I will say that I have asked Jennifer for all of the emails back and forth, the dates, the timelines, that I can fully understand it. And what I have seen is failure to communicate on your end repeatedly. And what I've also seen is a written agreement that said you'd have it done by September 30th. I have not seen any communication from you asking for an extension of any kind. And while I understand there are subcontractors that do the work, ultimately, it's your project. The buck stops with you.
And I understand that, but I mean, this summer was an exceptional summer. It was exceedingly difficult to get work done, and I asked to schedule it. We had the subgrade prepped for the sidewalks in July, and then we asked for the sidewalks to get put in, and they didn't get put in until the end of September. So,
Jennifer, can you go back a picture, please? Or forward, whichever, that other photo. So Luke, would you consider that acceptable punch list item approved, the city should sign off on it?
no, I mean, the blacktop was all repaired when they did the,
Right, so no, you would not consider that approved?
but that's not the way it's sitting now, is it?
Didn't we have Public Works go out and throw some gravel in there so it was less of a hazard? That's
And
how
even
it
if it's
sits.
not the gravel, if you look inside, where you should have sod, seed, something, the massive holes between the sidewalk and the soil, is that acceptable?
No.
So that's where I'm at, is no one has come to the city, whether it's our city staff or you, saying, we acknowledge that this is not acceptable and it is gonna cost us $8,000 and some odd change, we have this contractor lined up to fix it, we're bringing in this much soil, or whatever the plan's gonna be, to say this is what's gonna happen. So I'm not comfortable releasing, is 46,000 too much? Absolutely. That will not cost $46,000, but what is it gonna cost? You know, and I'm not I personally am not comfortable with where this project history has been, releasing anything until we at least have quotes saying this is what it's gonna cost, this is who we've hired, and this is when they're gonna start. But I'm only one person, that's my feelings on this.
No, I would echo what you're saying, Beth. You know, like the mayor said, you know, ultimately it's your project, it's your scheduling, you know, to do. Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that we did was get your attention with that number, so now that we have it, I would be the same thing. If you can come up with a schedule that says, and we know scheduling, you know, depending on when the snow goes out and all that stuff, it's gonna change. As long as we're communicated with, you know, it's gonna cost us 10 grand, we're gonna preliminary start May 1st because that's when the frost will be out or whatever. And it actually ends up being in the middle of May. I would be apt to kind of start talking about releasing the difference, but up until understanding what it's gonna be, you know, I think we'll hold where we're at.
So just clarification, you guys are saying hold it until we complete the work, or are you guys, because Jennifer had said that you were planning on taking the money and completing the work.
Well, because you weren't doing anything, so I made the.
Well, that's not fair to say I didn't do anything.
Well, hydro-seeded crap, I'll say that, like, you hydro-seeded over concrete and rough dirt, or mud, you know, so, no, nothing was being done. There wasn't, we as a council, or I should say me, I can't speak for the rest of them, but I wasn't seeing any motion or any even, hey, we didn't get to it because it snowed too soon, but this is who we hired to fix it. Did you hire anybody to fix it? So in my mind.
We have our own guys and our own equipment, so we do, like, all of the grading on the ponding, we did that with our employees and our equipment.
So you guys will.
So that would be the
Yeah,
plan
I mean,
here,
in
would
our
be we'd
mind,
bring in our
it's being
equipment
done.
and we would grade it out.
Right. I mean, I'm excited for this whole thing to be done and walk out there and have it all beautiful and have houses being built. It's just that interim of the houses being built and what it looks like right now. And I would think you'd want it to look presentable for the sale of the lots too. And it's just not up to par, in my opinion.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't see it after we had used up the dirt that we had on site, so, if it's really rough, I apologize.
I would feel comfortable saying that it shouldn't cost more than 20,000 to fix what's there, and that would include bringing in good soil, not having concrete on the top, you know, bringing in good black soil so it has a chance, to say, okay, we're gonna give half the money, but, keeping 20,000 or something, but my understanding of the escrow was if the developer doesn't do their part, we have money in escrow to take action and get it done, right? Am I misunderstanding with that? So that's the point we were at, is we didn't feel you were getting it done, so we were taking action to make sure it would get done.
Do you have anything showing communication with me after October 11th, which is when the street work was done, that there were any issues?
I'm not
Because
sure
I
that
don't
would-
have, I never
Would there
received
have to be,
anything.
though, if his contract was supposed to be done by end of September, would there need to be any? I mean, even if there was, would there need to be?
We did send an email on September 29th, and we had advised, and we sent the pictures advising of the concerns, and then I didn't hear anything back. I don't know if our engineer, Brian Surf, did, he's in the audience, but one other thing I do want to mention, in reviewing where that $46,000 came up with, I believe our engineer consulted he didn't just pick that number out of the sky. He consulted with a contractor to find out how much it would cost if they had to come in and do the work, and so that's where that number came from. Another thing that was mentioned was what Luke had asked, whether he could do it, and then the funds would be released back to him, and I think that's something that should be up for discussion as well, rather than the city having to hire a contractor. If Luke and his company can get it done, I think think that should be on the table as well.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah,
in
I
our,
mean, where I'm at is I'm fully, understanding you guys can do the work, so get it done and you get your money back, type of deal. We're not asking for Augusta National, I understand that when a house is built, it's going to get torn up. I completely understand that, but, like she was saying, that just, in the interim, when the house isn't built and there's people walking there, we just can't have it like that. I'm not asking for pulverized, expensive black dirt either. I'm just asking for an even surface, no chunks, no concrete, all that type of stuff, and you know that. I mean, it is what it is, but, the thing that kind of, is going back to me is that you never went and looked. So, I mean, it's hard for you to kind of speak on it as well. So, I don't know. I don't know what you want us to do. I mean, you never went and looked. This is what we have. This is what we're going by. If you had other pictures to show us that it's better than what that is, then we can talk, right?
I was told by my guys that they had wrapped it up and the hydro seeding guy went through and hydro seeded it, and so,
And I understand.
my assumption was that it was done.
Right.
We were shorthanded this year, just like everybody else was.
Right.
And so, I mean, we got the ponding done, we got the streets done, the sidewalk put in, and if the boulevard's not up to snuff, I'm sorry, we'll have to come back in the spring and fix it.
Right.
I guess my complaint is it sounded like from the email I'd received from Jennifer was, well, your 46 grand is gone, we're gonna take it and do what we need to do and sayonara. That was kind of the tone of the email that I received. And there's not anywhere near $46,000 worth of work to do, even if we have to retune up the whole entire boulevard where there's sidewalk.
oh, you are correct. That is exactly what happened at the last meeting. A motion was made, it was seconded, it passed, that the city will take responsibility of the boulevard restoration work and may choose to contract out this service. So if we wanted to make a change to that, we would need a motion.
So what happens with the excess money? Let's say somebody charges you 20 grand, which I think
Well,
is a very high number.
That was our question at the last meeting, and it wasn't answered because we needed to go back to the contract. We all agree that it's not gonna cost $46,057, and Jennifer's comment, on record was, well, whatever's remaining should go back to the developer, which would be you then. But it was, let's get the ball rolling, what's this gonna cost? Because we know if we wait till April, it's gonna be October before anything happens. We know everybody's schedule's gonna get busy. So we were trying to jump the gun and get going on it so that we weren't back in this same boat where it doesn't get done and then we snowfalls again. So I'm glad we've got your attention now, and I'm hoping that we can have something moving where right away when we can get on it, let's get on it and get seed down or something and get things happening, and then I'd be comfortable saying, you've done your due diligence on it, here's your money back. But I would also wanna put a deadline on it to where there's a piece where if you don't have it fixed, or at least telling us that it's gonna be fixed by this date, Public Works can put the project in their hands and get it hired out and get it done, so that we aren't sitting here waiting and wondering what's gonna happen. And I feel like that would save both of you guys.
I think at this point, we know we're keeping the money right now. And I guess what I would like to see then, if the council wants to, provide an opportunity to have this corrected, not having the city do it, if you want to do it or retain someone to do it, I'd like to see the numbers. I want to see the contract and have a deadline established. And at this point, we can't do anything for a few months here. So I think we have time to allow you to come back and present us with that information so we can discuss it further.
Yeah, that's disappointing. I mean, I was never informed, never sent anything saying, hey, this needs to be done, you're in default of the contract, we're going to take the money. It's just the communication, I don't know, has been lacking, in my opinion. I know you say that I didn't do a good job communicating. I'm not sure what more you would have wanted to see me do. I let you guys, or I let Jennifer know as soon as I had WW Blacktop scheduled, and they were talking end of September, which I said, okay, it's cutting it close, but, you know, if that's the best you can do. And then as the schedule got pushed, I tried to let her know as soon as I had any information on that. So,
Hey, Luke, for the record, can you confirm your email, please?
Luke, L-U-K-E, @kjwalk.com.
Okay. I just making sure, because I have an email from September 29th to you and Jennifer saying, as a reminder, when you come to finish the boulevard restoration, some areas will need to be excavated to allow for 6 inches of topsoil.
So my guys were out there after that because we didn't do all of the boulevard stuff until after the wear course was put down. So I guess if my guys didn't do that, which it sounds like they evidently didn't. I haven't been out there to know that for sure one way or the other, but clearly it's everybody's opinion that it wasn't done as well as it should have been. But I was not made aware of that. After that, I talked to my guys, said, hey, make sure that you get the boulevards tuned up after all the equipment is out of there, for, you know, relating to finishing the street, putting the wear course down, repairing the gate valve, all that stuff. I just wanted everything gone, and then we'd finalize it and get the erosion control down. And my guys said that was done, and I never got any communication after that. Even October 11th, I said, hey, let's start the process. I want to get my escrow money back. She said, I'll talk to the engineer. I'll get back to you. I didn't hear back for at least a month. Amy in our office asked sometime in November, I don't remember exactly what the date was, saying, hey, we're officially requesting the escrow money back, or formally requesting it. Evidently, my earlier request was not formal enough. And then Jennifer responded that she was going to pass it along to the engineer again, and that we were on the December 6th agenda. We do developing a lot of places. I've never had to show up to a city council meeting for an escrow release before. It's a pretty typically routine thing. And so I guess I didn't realize there was going to be discussion or anything about it. So then when she sent me an email saying that you guys were retaining $46,000, or that you'd only released the 100 and whatever it was, less the $46,000, I was a little frustrated. And then when I asked her about it, then I was further informed that it wasn't just an additional hold, it was actually a forfeiture, which came as quite a shock to me, since I hadn't been told that anything was wrong with the work up to that date. And then it's in that email that she provided me with a December 2nd letter from Brian at Bolton and Mink saying missing some castings and the boulevards still need work. Other than that, that's the only reason I know what still needed to be done.
So you have the map of your development. You know how much sidewalk there is. You know how much boulevard there is. Would you be able to go back and figure out what this is going to cost reasonably? I mean, I know your guys are doing it, and
I can, but I don't really want to put any effort into it if you guys aren't willing to. I mean, you said that you're just going to keep it for the time being and see what we do going forward.
I stated that on the record, that was what was decided in the last meeting. So if you have an alternative, I think this is your opportunity to present it for us to discuss.
Well, I guess in my ideal world, I'd get all my escrow money back, and then in good faith, I'll fix the boulevards in the spring. That would be my request.
I would have a problem with that just because in good faith, I don't feel that timelines have been met throughout this development since I have been sitting on city council. I would be more comfortable with you coming to us saying, hey, it's going to cost 8, we hold 12 in the event that you don't do it, and we have a little wiggle room, and then we would return the remaining. But I would not feel comfortable giving you all of it.
If my first day on the job is to hand you all of the money for that, I have failed on my first day. I'm sorry, that's unsafe. It's not complete. Any other questions for Mr. Israelson? Would anyone like to make a motion to review any possible alternatives presented before the next meeting?
I'd like to make a motion to, at least at the next meeting, either see responses from you with what it's gonna cost and stuff like that, and if we don't hear anything from you, then I would assume that the city can take plan and action, and by the March meeting, our Public Works, or April, Public Works Department can come to us with what it's gonna cost and who's on the schedule and what we're doing, so we can move with it for the summer.
So
I make
we,
a motion to hold everything until we see that.
so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I would second that. You know, I think our goal should be to get all the money back to you, but we've got to have a good finished product, so. However we need to do to get to that point, whether you get all the money back, which would be our goal, but, you know, project be.
So
So we have a motion and a second of that motion. Any discussion?
may I add a comment, or is this only for council members?
I think we've completed your comment portion of this. Any further discussion on the council?
Well, I would say that was my discussion, right? Our goal is to make sure, if we can get all the money back as quickly as possible, you know, and I think some of that's gonna fall back to you, if you can bring something to us in the next council, and it's 12 grand, you know, we'll release the other 30, and then we'll move forward and have you do the work in the spring and get you the 12 grand. But the goal should be, but we can't have that.
Who should I communicate with? Just to make sure that the communication is, it sounds like communication is an issue. So would you like somebody on the council or anybody to be included, or should I just continue to communicate with?
Every email you send, we get. Jennifer sends everything to us, so send it to her and she sends it to us.
Okay,
And actually, maybe a better idea, not to interrupt it, another thing is our engineer had obtained pricing, that 46,000 did not, he, like I said, he did not pull that number out of the sky. He had a reason to use that number based on what he had gotten from a contractor, what, if we hired a contractor to come in and do that work. So I think it's subject to the review of our engineer as well, to make sure that whatever number Luke provides, just as with anything else, with any, project that requires engineer's review, that he reviews and approves of it as well.
The 46,000, that included the sidewalk installation though, right? I assumed, or did that not?
I'm
Is
gonna
that
have
just
to defer
restoration?
to Brian on that.
So as Jennifer said, I did obtain pricing. This was not a competitive bid by any means. Before we drafted the letter, I did reach out to a contractor familiar with the area, you know, what would it cost? My assumptions are, you know, you're gonna be done with this in, by the end of April, right? I think that's important here for all of this. We have to think about our timelines here, especially if hypothetically something doesn't get done. The city has to have some time to contract something, and we want to be able to do this within the seating window. So that's an aside. So my assumptions are that's kind of the time frame for our contractor to finish it. Some other assumptions in that is that, you know, potentially there's not cooperation. He has to bring in topsoil borrow. Certainly the developer can do this much more efficiently, right? He has topsoil that he owns on the site. He can bring it in, all that sort of thing. But again, to ask a contractor to come in and do what I'd call piddly work, it's going to be inflated. And the city has to contract with someone, and it's a lot,
So
right?
that
I get
46
it.
didn't include sidewalks, that was the restoration.
So essentially, the 46 is, in my mind, based on our observations, the boulevard condition is a direct result of sidewalk construction.
Okay, yep.
What we're seeing, I don't know the exact timeline either, but the sidewalks were constructed within the time frame set forth by the developer's agreement. And then they sat, right? So in my mind, it was a direct relationship to the sidewalk construction. Was the boulevard, there's gravel still there, I mean, that's what it is. It just so happens, that 46,000, you know, it makes sense.
Thank you very much for that information. Do we want to amend your motion to include numbers from Bolton and Mink, or like how would?
I
Or
guess
should
my
we-
recommendation to staff is just to make sure that we get the approval of the engineer, that he feels it's sufficient based on the information with Luke doing it himself and the cost savings. And I think Brian has a better feel for what that number is versus, say, city staff.
I guess I would say, in my world, I'm estimating, right? I can't, I'm not directly tied to the market of this. So that would be my caution, I guess, is really the only way to determine this is a competitive bid or getting quotes from a couple of contractors, which it hasn't been done at this point.
True. Thank you. All right, so we have a motion with a second. We've had discussion. Let's go ahead and vote on it. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in. All right, next on our presentation agenda, Brian, if you want to come up here, and we're going to walk through the WTP Campus Concept Plan and 2023 Infrastructure CIP. That was a mouthful.
Please bear with me for just a couple of seconds. So I just have some handouts. You should have these in your packet. Take one each. Pass it down. Hopefully that's a little easier for you guys to see as we look at that. Also, we go old fashioned here, just have something to point at.
Oh, I like big paper, we can see it.
Maybe it'll be up on the screen as well.
Oh, yep, sure can do that.
Right, I pulled up water. We'll talk about water treatment first. Okay, two brief topics for you tonight. First being the water treatment facility. It's kind of been an ongoing process here. Tonight I can provide you a little bit of history and update, as well as where we're at with the concept plan. So in 2022, the city had preliminary discussions with the current landowner and executed a purchase option for a parcel of land for a treatment facility, and that would be on the west side of Eagle Lake. In September, the city received a hydrogeologic assessment. It had that completed. Findings of this report indicated that multiple high-capacity wells are feasible at a site that would be essentially in the northwest corner of 211th Street and 598th Avenue. And if you're looking at the document that's on the left side of your page, you'd be looking at 211th Street. And then kind of the bottom part of the page, you're looking at 598th. So this is one area that we've identified as a contender for a water treatment facility. So since then, Bolton and Mink and the city staff have been meeting and working together to kind of create a conceptual layout of this parcel, what it looks like. By no means final at this time. Really one of the main goals here is determine how much land are we looking at, and that will potentially dictate our next steps. So with that, let's look a little bit deeper at the concept plan. Again, we're at the northeast corner of 211th and 598th, and this is kind of in the southwest corner of Eagle Lake corporate limits. We're looking at approximately 5-acre acquisition. This is bound by those two streets, as well as an extension of Peregrine Avenue, which you can see on the right side of the page. Essentially just a conceptual extension of Peregrine Avenue out there, staying south of that future right-of-way, if it were to ever extend that way. As we put this together, considerations were made for what it takes to actually construct a plant, future expansion, as well as other things such as a water tower in the future. We also looked at street improvements in this area. What are the city's goals for that? We considered future wells and other needs. With that, the plant building will have additional storage factored in, but a future tower is projected in roughly the 20-year time frame is kind of what we're thinking. So I made mention briefly to the well assessment. On the concept plan, we are showing 2 new wells on the opposite ends of the parcel. These are not to run simultaneously, but one of these wells would be able to service the city. A connection to wells number 2 and 3, which are located in Lake Eagle Park currently, is another consideration. Tentatively, the plan would be to leave these in service as an emergency backup. So they would not be actively used all the time, but they would be used as needed. Multiple wells on the parcel, again, can't run simultaneously. They're too close to each other that they're going to have an effect on each other. So again, it might make sense in the future to construct a raw water line from the plant to these existing wells in the park. As part of this project, well number 1, which is by the existing water tower today, would be sealed and abandoned. And also on the concept plan, we're showing a 3rd well on the campus to be an option in the future, depending on capacity needs. At this point, a bonding bill really is needed to go much further in the process. A bonding bill will allow the cities to score higher on future funding applications. Currently, one of the items that the city has is manganese content in the city's water supply. And until we have a bonding bill, that's really not going to be to the city's, I guess for lack of a better way of saying it, a benefit, right, in terms of the funding piece of this. So at this time of year, 2025 construction is probably the earliest likely schedule for construction. So that's what we have. Again, maybe just rehash. 5-acre site. Some of that on the east side is dedicated towards right-of-way, kind of looking at the topography to the east. It goes down pretty rapidly there. We've also got the cemetery in this, I guess it'd be the northeast corner of 211 and 598. Certainly we gotta be cognizant of that and staying outside of that. Maybe a little bit tricky to see, but we do just, again, conceptually show some street improvements of 598th, kind of shifting outside of the cemetery, as well as 211th, shifting south a little bit. Not to be a final design, but certainly as we look at this, we'd probably take advantage of the opportunity and dedicate some right-of-way to allow for those future improvements. Again, our bounds to the north, on the north side to Peregrine Avenue. A lot of green space here, maximize well separation where we can. And that's really where staff and council potentially come in here. You know, what is the use for that green space? Certainly we've don't have a final configuration here. It is possible, talking with John Groutman, that we can, you know, change the configuration of the plant, make it a less elongated, more square, if you will, and allow for some more uses in that north piece. I don't know what that is, whether it's future facilities, a garage. I don't think there's a need for a city garage at this point, is what I'm being told. But things like that. Another hypothetical example would be a fire hall or something like that, if it were determined that this were a location for that. So partially you got green space for construction without enough green space, you're going to have to buy temporary easement or that sort of thing to actually build and do future expansion, but that's where we're at now, kind of reaching that 5-acre target. That's really all I have on that, but I'd love to hear your thoughts, open it up for discussion, or questions if you have any.
I think that area makes sense. I know that we were on, I think Anthony and I were on that preliminary commission, and I think that's essentially what we had discussed in that whole meeting. Location of a future water tower, some facilities up there, and eventually maybe some future expansion of some more green space and parks perhaps beyond that 5 acres. But I think it's a great proposal, and I think you did a great job with it. Especially with what we had discussed in those earlier meetings.
Is this land already owned by the city?
We have an option to purchase. It's owned by Gary and Kim Henniker, and I believe it's a 5-year option. I better double check on that, but we do have an option with them.
Okay, so the estimated cost here, we have, and obviously I know it's the 2022 numbers. If we're talking 2025, there's gonna be obviously an uptick there just in this summary, but then also land cost, do we have an estimate of what that would be?
No, when we, in the option, we agreed upon, we would get, I guess, a market valuation at the time. We weren't able to really kind of firm up any numbers or have a range. The owner of the land wanted to reserve the right, so if it's 3 years down the road at that point, then we look at what is, the market value of the land.
Sure. Thank you.
How much green space would there be, does it say on here? With this plant?
Yeah, I don't have it.
The north side, is that 2 acres, 3 acres?
Yeah, I don't have an exact number for you. If you're looking north, north of the yellow parking area, certainly you're close to half, taking out a water tower doesn't take much there.
Right.
So
That
roughly
is-
2.5 acres on the north side.
And we could potentially make it bigger by making it more of a square building,
Yes.
and that wouldn't change anything on like the wells or anything like that. I'm sure you'd have to move them around maybe, but.
Right, and we've got a well, I know things are a little rotated here, on the upper right side, possible well location up there. Really, there's a 50-foot setback on those wells, and that's to anything sewered typically. So if it were to come to park or anything like that, there's really no concern. Certainly don't want to melt a well in the middle of a soccer field, right? It's those types of considerations at that point.
You talked about not having wells being ran simultaneously if they're on the same site. What's the space that's needed to be able to run them simultaneously? Meaning, if we were to say 10 or 15 acres or something like that, can a well be placed on the very outside of that and be ran simultaneously or not?
Yeah.
I'm thinking for future development in Eagle Lake. I don't want us to get behind the gun and say, yep, do this, and then we miss out on land and he develops it, sells it to the developer, and now what could have been another park or athletic facilities for our youth and adults, we've now missed out on being able to at least have that land purchased and the option for it.
So let me maybe elaborate on this a little bit here. So now north is up here. We got the plant location down here. I don't think you guys have this in your pack or in front of you right now, but yeah. So water plant, we did just briefly look very high level, and I made mention of this. We've got well number 2, well number 3 over here in the park area. It would make sense, in the near future to connect those up. At this point, we've got adequate separation. That would make more sense in my mind.
Okay.
We're looking at a solution along those lines.
Okay. Versus adding another one on that site right away.
If we're looking for simultaneous type
All right, any other questions?
Is this packet enough to start moving forward with some of the requests and things like that for funding?
Yes, we have submitted applications for low-interest loan grant funding, but as Mr. Sarf alluded to score high enough, there needs to be some recognition or factoring in of the manganese, which we would then, I believe, would have a much higher score. And so in talking with Mayor Norton and also Public Works staff and John Grotman and Mr. Sarf, we've talked about doing, if not an in-person meeting, trying to get a remote meeting set up here in January with our legislators, just to give them an update, because since the last time we had a remote meeting with them, it was probably about, maybe not quite a year ago, we didn't have as much information as we have now, and I feel like we have a lot more information to share with them, so we will definitely be in contact with them and keep moving ahead with trying to get funding. It really is just not gonna be possible without grant funding and low-interest loans, just due to the.
Well, I'm assuming we'll come out with some bonding bill at the end of this session with the little surplus that we have.
Right.
It'd be good to be in line at least.
For sure. Yep, certainly one of the purposes of this exercise and the well assessment is to, again, set ourselves up for these conversations, one, and then two, I guess, potentially, thinking about land acquisition a little bit harder. What does that look like? What's the timing of that? You know, we're not ready to pull the trigger on that today, but, you know, we're one step closer. We got a little bit more momentum at this point.
I just want to say thank you for providing this. Even I can understand it, being the newbie.
Good.
I will say, kind of on a personal note, coming from a community not so long ago where our utility bill for water was $120 a month and the usage was $8, paying for a water treatment facility, I want to make sure we're not putting ourselves into a position like that here. So I'm glad that we're doing a lot of the research ahead of time and, of course, looking at that hopeful bonding fund. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. All right, with that, I can move into a just short discussion on the capital improvement. Again, you guys should have one of these as well that you can look at hopefully a little bit closer. All right, so city staff asked that we kind of update capital improvement plan, and really when I say capital improvements, I'm talking about infrastructure, sewer, water, streets, that sort of thing, and for the purposes of this discussion. This is not a new plan. The city put together these cost estimates many years ago, and that we've kind of been updating them periodically, and that's what we're doing here today. This plan includes reconstruction. We also did want to put, the wastewater treatment facility on that, as well as the CASA 27 trail. I guess as part of this update too, the city has been checking things off the list, including some water main loopings in the last few years. So that's one of the purposes of this is it's a tool for planning and prioritization. So we did want to just update that. So what we're looking at today, few different classifications. Again, reconstruction, that's kind of a bulk of the discussion, maybe not a bulk of the cost. The wastewater treatment facility does skew that number. As you look at your table here, hopefully this will point you exactly to where things are at. And maybe I'll just mention too, before I get too far, that $12.5 million, it's very preliminary at this point, and again, that's really dependent on outside funding, help from the state and whatnot. And that same caveat would probably go with the pedestrian connection, number 9 in pink there as well. Usually projects like that don't don't happen without some sidewalk, safe routes to school type funding. Usually for the reconstructs, it's a little bit different. Those are funded in part by statute 429, assessment process, that sort of thing. So a little bit different category. So what we have, I'll just go through these one by one. One of our remaining water main looping items is number 1, Valley Lane to Cedar Path water main looping. It's been on the list for a little bit now. It remains on there. There has been some movement with ownership in that area, so it's, you know, hard to know what the future is for that particular one. Relatively small project, but that's still on the list. As we look at number 2 in red through number 7 in white, those are really what I'd consider traditional street and utility construction, where we're completely reconstructing the street, the sewer, the water, and usually with that process is assessing those costs to the benefiting properties as well. Tried to put some sort of a priority. That's a new addition to this capital improvement plan. Just kind of looking at construction sequencing through some of these. And as you look at the table, again, we put a 5-year marker on that. That's always a moving target, but at least gives you an idea, kind of through 2024 through 2028. Generally, that's the sequence that, from a constructability standpoint, would make sense. Nothing in stone there by any means, but just to give you an idea of kind of what we're looking at. So with those reconstructions, again, completely start from scratch, tear out the street, tear out the utilities, and rebuild. Kind of assuming the city's standard street widths there to get these costs. Driveway approaches, also assumed sidewalk on one side of each of these blocks as well. Pedestrian ramps as part of the sidewalk system would be reconstructed to ADA standards. With utilities, do it in the street as well as services up to the right-of-way line. And that's really where these costs come from. They're planning level type costs, but give you a pretty good idea of what those would be. In total, we're looking at $18.2 million on the plan currently. Again, I'll reiterate the caveat with the plant and the trail. I guess maybe I'll talk about the trail. I think many of you are pretty familiar with it. What I'm referring to is the recently MAPO did a connection study on this portion of road here. Some of the city's needs is to make a pedestrian connection here. We've included a couple of other segments that weren't directly studied, but that makes sense at this time, and that's what the city's going to pursue for funding in the near future. When it comes to funding those types of things, if the city were to get awarded grant dollars for that sort of thing, usually that's there's a lead time for those funds. It doesn't happen next year, for example. The city does have the option to advance construct something like that, where you'd be on the hook for it at the time being, but then, you know, the federal government would reimburse you in the funding year. So that's really all I had for the update. One thing, as I was preparing my notes for this, I just wanted to maybe put a plug in. It seemed appropriate as we talk about planning for future improvements and financing and that sort of thing. Is we recently went through the 429 process, the special assessment process with the Agency Street project. And I think many of you were on there for that entire period, if I'm thinking right. And you may remember that the city's current policy is just not really in touch with benefit. And you know, even going back almost 20 years, the city's constantly been changing the policy, right, on the fly. It doesn't really apply, it doesn't pass the special benefit test. So as we start thinking about these projects into the future, it might be a good thing to start considering talking with the attorney and getting maybe a rewrite of that policy in place. So going forward, we can be a little bit more streamlined and consistent going forward. Any questions on these improvements?
Two questions I would have. One, for number 9, how soon would we need to be applying for the grant? If we're looking at our 2028 or 2027, I mean, are we set with what Maple has provided us where we are at a point where we should be, applying for grants, or another year? What are we looking at there?
Yes. City administrator is spearheading that now. I will be assisting her this week, and
So we're kind of to that point.
yes.
Yep, we went through the process with like the letter of intent, and they signed off and said, yep, you're ready to submit the full application. So Brian and I are gonna be touching base on some of the items in the application that are needing to be complete, and then by the 13th it's due, and we'll be submitting by then, so.
Okay. And then second question with Le Sueur, it looks like it ends kind of in the middle. Is that normal that they won't go all the way to like an intersection? They end in the middle of the street versus going all the way down?
Isn't that where the project started? Isn't that where it was done the last time?
Right, it's kind of a function of, I think, utility age and that sort of thing.
So that's normal to do. I mean, it's not,
Right,
Okay.
you know, I think there's still useful life in those utilities.
okay.
Yep,
That's the older section of Le Sueur.
correct, yep, they did an
And it
extension of the
probably
sewer.
hasn't been redone for a long time,
Yeah.
since it was put in.
Probably, yep, it's probably original.
If I may add one other thing, if it's okay. Shannon Sweeney with David Drone Associates is in the audience, and in my memo, I had referenced, I would like to work with Shannon to review our upcoming projects, and then, see if he can help us explore different funding options, reviewing our utility rates, what makes sense for how much we could handle as far as taking on new debt service. So I think that's something too, we want to be more proactive on, and like Mr. Sarf mentioned, updating our special assessment policy now is the time to do it. So that should be a goal. We'll work on getting that done so we're ready and start chipping some of these things off the block and be proactive.
Thank you
Anything
very
else?
much.
Thank you very much, Brian.
You bet.
All right, next item on the agenda, we have Randy King from Procore Inspection, Building Inspection Services.
Well, good evening. My name is Randy from Procore out of Mankato. We are a building assessment inspection services provider for Mankato community as well as communities around Mankato, and have been assisting the city of Mankato since about 2021. And during that time period have been reached out by some community members in the city of Eagle Lake in regards to us providing some information to you guys. And in the last recent few months, I've done that through Jennifer. Spoke a little to Anthony in recent months too, and she had indicated to me to try to step in, talk to you guys as a council to see if you were interested in a proposal for services. So with that, I would open up any questions you guys have.
Tell me why we need you. That's my question.
That's probably a more intimate discussion behind closed doors, but I don't know it's necessarily a need, but the way that you guys have it currently set up, you have the building code enacted here, which means it needs to be administered and enforced. As a result of that, someone has to be on staff, either contracted or employed by the city in order to continue to enforce the code. That's essentially what we specialize in. Our perspective in assisting the city of Mankato in the recent few years is that there could be some improvements to the city of Eagle Lake, and we think we can do just that. Administration, enforcement of the code, and bringing things up to speed. Yep.
For example?
Consistency enforcement.
So right now,
Well, so I look at the zoning aspect, but I do not handle the, building inspection, I guess, if you will. There's the state building codes that's not something that, city staff, you'd have to have the expertise and knowledge, so that's what Dan Murphy handles.
And that's what we contract, and that's why you're talking about contracting, is that service, right?
Is that what you're referring to?
Correct, yep, correct,
Which is required by statute.
correct.
Currently, Dan is doing that.
Yep.
Is that something, are we looking at, and I think it's probably more towards you, Jennifer, are we looking at addition to or replacement of, or all the above, potential?
So, I almost said Procor, Mr. King had reached out and had offered the services he provides, so I did not seek out, looking for this, so I guess that's why I suggested if he wants to bring this to the council, he sure can, but we have building inspection services provided to us by, Dan Murphy with building inspection services. Are you, I guess maybe I stepped out of the room for a minute, so maybe I missed some of it. Are you saying that you also provide like zoning code review and?
We don't do anything with
don't
zoning,
do
yeah, I
zoning
mean, occasionally we do, with City Mankato, we assist in fences and sheds and so forth, but we don't get into
So
zoning
you're
plan
just
review.
looking to provide
Yep.
like state building code? You
Correct,
would
yep,
be
just the
reviewing
administration and
that. Okay.
enforcement of the building code only.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yep.
We deal with soil erosion control, we have certification in that area too, so we can assist in some of that stuff, but we don't generally provide the full service in that.
So you would be proactively going out looking for these things, not working off a complaint basis, or, like, how does that work?
Yeah, great question. Well, part of code enforcement is dealing with complaints, so that inevitably is part of the process. Sometimes we get involved in the zoning stuff, we try not to as much as we can, but the reality is yeah, their complaints are part of the process in code enforcement, and that includes issues that are brought about by neighbors. Property lines occasionally come into play with that kind of thing, where things are being built, but yeah, that is certainly part of it.
Okay.
And Randy and I have worked together at a professional, setting, through real estate and stuff like that, and I would just like to say, the professionalism, the promptness, the willingness to, go the extra mile, I think is something that Randy does really well. I think it'd be a huge asset for us. He would show up to meetings, when we need him to. He would obviously be on site and the overall knowledge that Randy has, and probably the company as itself, is wide, and, I think he would just be a positive change for our city.
Randy, how many employees do you have?
Right now myself, one additional partner, and we're in the process of hiring another.
And when it goes in, permit goes in for your consideration, what's turnaround time on that?
Depends on the type of permit and what's exactly being proposed for the construction work, but generally speaking, residential, we try to have out within 7 to 10 days, and commercial within 10 to 14, and that'd be working days.
Does that follow, Jennifer, what we've been doing?
I mean, I think it's our turnaround time, I think, is pretty quick. I think it depends, like Randy's saying, on the project and the time of year, because I think, building season can get really crazy, and depending on what we have going on in the community for, new, permits that are being pulled for new home construction or multifamily, that might affect it, but I think it's pretty quick turnaround.
And then when you have to come out and inspect, is that turnaround time for something like that pretty reasonable?
Generally next day, we try to avoid same day as much as we can, because that generally sets a precedent. We don't want to try to continually meet, but typically next day, and we do offer them 6 days a week, including we answer phone calls 7 to 7 and Saturdays.
And remind me, does that include, like, what would go to him include deck builds and stuff, or is that something that you guys?
Yes, nope.
Okay.
Deck
That's
builds.
where I see the big
Footings
need
and-
for quick turn, is if someone's digging footings one day and want to pour concrete the next, we need quick turn.
Yep. Yep, and that's where the Saturday stuff comes into play huge, because especially with things like decks, homeowners are generally trying to do the work themselves, and a lot of times, of course, they have commitments with work and so forth during the week. So we usually are out later and on the weekends.
Does our current service not provide Saturday service, do we know, or not?
We don't have any staff here that's working on Saturdays, so I've never
I can tell you personally, I've dealt with Dan twice on building decks, sadly, or building stuff with that part, and he's been very responsive for me with nights and weekends and things like that. So I haven't had any issues with him, but I'm one resident of Vinnie, but, I guess the other question would be his fees, you know, how does your fees relate to his fees, and things that way. Have we had any other further complaints with our building inspector now? I know we had some with the, rent, or those storage units
Right.
and stuff, and I think that was kind of put to rest, but have there been other complaints or issues that way as well?
Not that I've been made aware of, no. I did see one, if I might ask a question, I did see on here property maintenance. And one thing our building inspector does do is he does inspections of our rental property. We have a rental housing code, is that what that refers to as well? Property
Yep,
maintenance?
property maintenance involves other issues too, you know, blight, for instance, as an example, but yes, we do rentals.
Okay.
Yep.
Jennifer, you would probably be working the most with the building inspector, right?
Between myself and Mandy in the front office, administrative clerk.
Do you-
Typically, when a permit comes in, I won't even see it.
Mandy
It
will.
goes, unless it involves zoning, it won't even come across my desk if it's, you know, something that's just with, something that the building inspector review with state building codes, I probably won't even see it. So, and like I mentioned to Randy too, it's just up to the council. If you would like to open it up and do requests for proposals, we sure can do that. You know, we have a current contract with Dan Murphy right now. And so we wanted to give Mr. King an opportunity. He requested to come and talk to you and talk about the services he offers. And so I just leave it to the council and what you guys feel is best at this time. And maybe it's something down the road, or maybe it's something you want to look at now. I think that's up to your
What's
discretion.
the, current contract? Is it like yearly, every 5 years?
I should put that in here. There's a, I reviewed it, I can't tell you right off the top of my head, but there is a provision in there that we'd have to give so much notice. I don't know. 90 days, okay, thank you.
Do we have kind of a ballpark comparison in fees? I mean, if this is a real, you know, cost savings, or if this is gonna be much more expensive, I mean, is it worth going through the RFP process? Is that something,
Yep, that's something we can provide through
Yeah.
the formal RFP process, yep, most
I
definitely.
guess I would be in favor of that at this point, is just getting a little more information so we can compare it to what we currently have.
Well, and if we open it up, we have to open it up, right?
Correct.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so we would have to go through the formal process of opening up for bids, which isn't a huge deal, but it's staff time and review. And if we're outside of contract or not, you know, that's usually when they get done, right? So if we're coming up the end of a contract, do a bid process, so.
Any other questions?
No, I guess the only thing I'd say is, I mean, thankfully, I don't have to work with Dan a ton, but there is some benefit to having someone that's been in the city and knows it, knows, you know, the ins and outs and all that. Not that you couldn't, by any means, but unless there's a massive difference or a decent amount difference with turnaround time or procedures or cost, if it's pretty close apples to apples, I would say let's stay with what we've had. We haven't had complaints, we haven't had issues, he's been good with it. He knows the city really well, been doing it since 2007. Stayed kind of status quo, but it doesn't always hurt to know and make sure that we are getting charged fairly and stuff.
All right, well, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Randy, appreciate you
Appreciate
coming in, and look forward to getting some more information from you. All right, so that concludes presentations. We'll go on to new business. Number 1, resolution requesting parking restrictions on 56 and 17, or no, on 14. So City of Eagle Lake is hereby requesting Blue Earth County restrict parking from 17 to 14, whereas City of Eagle Lake will be responsible for posting no parking signs and enforcing parking restrictions. We have a resolution here. Any question? What do I do with these?
No, you, Mayor Norton, City Council, you're absolutely right. are just following up from the last council meeting. There was a decision made that the council wanted to have no parking signs installed. Following that meeting, I did follow up with the Blue Earth County engineer, and he said what he needs next is an actual formal resolution from the city council this evening. So I let him know that I would add it to the agenda, we'd get a resolution and send it back. So
All right.
basically, just as Mayor Norton said, the resolution would we're recommending to Blue Earth County that no parking signs be installed on CASA 56 from CASA 17 to Highway 14. And then included in the resolution is an acknowledgement that the city police department would be responsible for enforcement of the parking restrictions in that area.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. So we need a motion to accept the resolution.
All motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion?
I assume since it's not noted, it would be placed on both sides of that road, right?
Oh, no parking?
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Yep. Good clarification.
Do we want to add that into the resolution?
Sure, we sure can do that.
Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next item, resolution supporting state bonding for regional water resource recovery facility. So, from what we just heard from Brian, I have questions, right? So Jennifer, do you have anything you want to share on this one? And
Yes.
just,
This
thanks.
is, go ahead.
no.
This gets a little confusing because it says Regional Water Resource Recovery Facility, so we kind of might think of a water treatment, water plant. This is actually a water treatment for, where we send our sewer. And so right now, the city sends our sewer to the city of Mankato. We are one of the customers, so there's 6 partners, and they've been dealing with some cost estimates that just keep going up, and there was no bonding bill passed the last time, and there was a request for bonding. And so we met at the most recent meeting with the city of Mankato and the other partners, and they are basically asking the partners for their help in lobbying legislators to really support their request for funding, which is increased. The previous bond funding request the city of Mankato made totaled $30 million. Now they're asking for much more than that because the session ended without a bonding bill. And the actual project cost is estimated to be between $84 million and $89 million. So with that, there's a resolution attached to the memo. I just think it's important to note that this is very critical for Eagle Lake. As our community hopefully continues to grow, we need to make sure that they have the capacity to accept our wastewater as well. So this is a very important project. It's not a need, it's not a want, it is a need. So,
Thank you. And so there's no crossover in what we're talking about with the water treatment facility. This is very different. So
Yep.
we're not going up there, hey, Senator Friends, buy us this today, and then fund that tomorrow.
Yep.
So they are very different. Okay, thank you for that clarification. So I need a motion for this resolution, it's number 107 in your packets. Would anyone like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, next item, resolution providing for issuance and sale of GEO Water Revenue Note Series 2023A, page 108 in our packets.
and we do have Shannon Sweeney in the audience. If he would like to address the council, he may wish to review the letter that he drafted in his recommendation.
Sure.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. We provided some information. There was direction provided in your December meeting, I believe, to consider an application for funding through the Minnesota Rural Water Midi Loan Program, in this instance, to fund water tower renovation project. Total project costs are estimated, including finance costs, if you choose to finance a project, at $561,690, which includes both engineering and a contingency. the city had previously discussed, and we do recommend the use of ARPA funds or federal stimulus funding to reduce what would be financed and to use cash that you have through that grant that has been received, so that the actual note itself would be $462,000. In past capital planning, when we've done utility rate studies and projections, we had already identified some needs for rate increases in the water utility in particular due to our 2021 utility and street reconstruction project. And we have been planning for this water tower renovation project as well. Our recommendations had been along the lines of increases of approximately 5%, taking rates for a 5,000 gallon customer from approximately $31.30 a month in 2022 to approximately $38.05 by 2026. Understanding that we will still be running a deficit in that utility, or are projected to, for the next several years until we have debt that falls off in 2028. We're not accumulating vast amounts of cash with these recommendations. We're being prudent in our expenditure of our customers' dollars to fund this reconstruction project over time, and ultimately, minimize the impact on utility rates as best we are able to. The terms on the financing for the proposed tower renovation project are 10 years, which again is consistent with past capital improvement planning work that we've done in our rate studies. The bonds could be prepaid anytime, or this note could be prepaid anytime after February 1st of 2030. The interest rate on the loan is 3.75%. And again, we have recommended the use of cash. If you decide to proceed with the financing as proposed, there's a resolution in your packet that would require your action. Ultimately, we would close on the funding on January 23rd of this month. So more than happy to answer your questions regarding the recommendations or our past discussions with regard to water utility rates.
So your recommendation to use cash, you're talking about the ARPA funds?
Correct.
And financing the rest. So the interest cost on this is just over $100,000. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, it is. You don't have that much cash in your water utility to pay cash for this project.
No, I know, and just,
And you will still run deficits even with the financing of it in your water utility, and you can't do that forever, so.
I will not admit to reading this contract word for word, but I did not see anything in there about paying off if we were to receive more funds later or some kind of grant funding towards this.
That's that.
Would that reduce that interest paid over time? Do we have any penalty to pay off early?
Sure. That's that call date that I referenced, which is February 1st of 2030 is your first opportunity to prepay. So you would
we're all
not
in
be able
until
to.
then?
Correct.
Okay.
Which is typical when we're issuing municipal financing. There's usually call protection, meaning you can't prepay for a period of time. If you shorten the duration of that call protection, the investors that purchase these notes will charge you a little bit more in interest. And so usually if we don't think there's an intention to prepay, and in this instance, the water utility is going to be running a deficit for a few more years and doesn't have the cash position to make a significant prepayment, we didn't think that call protection was bad, because ultimately we expect you're going to be making payments till that time, particularly when you're also considering a water treatment facility, which will, if implemented, have an additional local contribution, I would imagine. We've been talking about this for a long time, so we didn't make it up.
No, I'm not thinking that at all.
Okay, good.
It's just,
I understand borrowing money is not something that we aspire to do, but in this instance, it's probably needed, so.
A lot of things have to do with water tonight, in some way, shape, or form. My question, I guess more for the council, is when we've done budget planning, is this something that we have accounted for and set aside? I mean, do we have a 5-year plan to try to offset some of this? I mean,
It's something that we're working on with our capital improvement plan to do a better job of making sure, because you can't just all of a sudden one year spend $500,000 when you haven't been saving. Like Shannon's saying, you'll draw down your cash reserves, and we've had like the agency project and some other things that have come up that, you know, kind of skew everything and move things that you thought are priority. All of a sudden this comes up, and that's where we need to do as a city, I think, a better job of capital improvement planning and prioritizing, and I think we're on the right path, so.
We have come before the council on several occasions with projections for your water and sanitary sewer utilities, the capital projects that you're discussing, the impacts to user rates, for at least 3 or 4 years, 3 years at the minimum. And so, again, we have been planning. We've discussed this in great detail, at least internally. I look at your audits each year and try to figure out how best to manage your funds so that we don't have to borrow money. But in this instance, we're probably at a point where we need to, if we're going to do the project and you've awarded a contract, we probably need to finance it.
And I think this past year was another year that we've actually been starting to take into effect, you know, the utility rates and trying to plan more for the future. You know, we've been running a deficit for a while, and you can't jump 30%. There might be some mutiny somewhere. But I think we're on the right track, as I've seen it this past year, as we're consciously looking at those future plans. And unfortunately, things will have to ramp up, but, you know, we're just a little bit behind the start of when we should have started doing that.
Well, and don't you think, Shannon, too, now, not to interrupt you or cut you off, Councilmember, but you're absolutely right. And I think, you know, when these projects happen, then we start right away setting aside money for the next time the next 20 years that we have to do it, we start setting aside money, and not waiting till we get to, you know, a couple years before it's due for,
Yeah, or at a minimum, understanding and programming the projects when we feel we're best capable of affording them, when other debt drops off, things like that. And so, with your capital improvement planning list that you looked at tonight, we'll take the next step and analyze those projects, how they impact your enterprise funds, what they would do to your tax levy, so you can make an educated decision on how high of a priority they are as a result of the impact they'll have on your finances. So, not here to talk anybody into borrowing money. I'm here to help you make decisions that, you know, manage the city financially well. And so, I want you, when you decide to proceed with reconstruction projects, to understand what those impacts are well in advance before you invest a ton of money, so that you can say, yes, we need to do this project, it's a high enough priority where we're willing to, you know, afford the project locally through whatever resources we have to apply to it. So,
thank you very much.
you're welcome.
Any other thoughts, comments? I guess we're looking for a motion to approve the resolution that would also have us signing this agreement for the bond. Am I saying that correctly?
yep, that's correct.
Yeah, there's a note and a loan agreement associated with the note. Essentially, every time we borrow monies, it's essentially a bond issue under Minnesota statute. We like to call them loans or notes so that people understand what we're talking about. And so those terms are used interchangeably.
I'd make that motion to move forward.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilmember Whittinger and seconded by Councilmember Borich. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
And actually, Shannon, if you don't mind if I interrupt, We're gonna be talking about the TIF modification for Fox Meadow, if you don't mind hanging around for that conversation.
absolutely.
In case any questions come up.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I do not sign this one.
I don't believe there's anything on there for you to sign if there's no sign here tab. I tried to.
It
go
literally
there.
says do not sign,
Yep.
so, okay.
If I miss anything, I will give you a call tomorrow, but I
Sounds
tried to
great.
mark it.
All right, so on to the next item, Fox Meadow Townhomes, LCC, TIF agreement modification and resolution.
Place here. All right, Mayor and City Council, just gonna, can't pull up my memo, my screen's being a little slow here. But just in my memo here, it says a development agreement by and between the City of Eagle Lake and Fox Meadow Townhome was adopted back in April of 2022, and included a construction start date at that time of August 1st, 2022, and a construction end date of January 1st, 2023. And those dates were included in the TIF developers agreement based on information we had received from the developer. After that agreement was approved, there was a wetland delineation EAW process that the developer had to go through. Therefore, the timeline has obviously been delayed. So we, in consulting with Shannon Sweeney, the TIF agreement will need to be modified to reflect the actual start and end dates, and then be approved by the city council, and that's why it's before you this evening. So included in your packet is a first amendment to development agreement with corresponding resolution. And these were drafted by an attorney that specializes in TIF, that's Taft Law. And the amendment consists of the following language: construction shall begin by May 1st, 2023, and construction of the project will be substantially completed on or before July 1st, 2024, subject to unavoidable delays. Except for this amendment, all terms and provisions of the TIF agreement shall remain in full force in effect. Unless Mr. Sweeney has anything else to add, or you have any questions, or we just ask for a motion to approve the proposed amendment and resolution.
My only comment would be that the delay, and based on the revisions being requested or being made in the development agreement, the delay will only impact what's reimbursed to the developer, the city, which would be less, ultimately, because they're shortening the duration of that timeline for reimbursement by not starting their project as quickly as they originally conceived. And so, there's no financial, the city's investment in the project would only be less because of that. And so I would say that if you're still supportive of the project, this is a good amendment to make so that the developer is not in default and he can proceed with the project.
Thank you. Any further questions? Mr. Sweeney? Do we have a motion to accept the amendment?
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Councilmember Roach made the motion, and Councilmember Steinberg seconded the motion. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. All right, next is use agreement with Gary and Kim Hineker and Steve Wolf. This is on the 598th, I'm gonna say snow fence, and I'm saying this incorrectly. But this was to allow some of the snow drifting to not come across 598th and cause the things that I drive through, dropping the kids off every morning.
Mayor Norton, City Council, in the council packet is a proposed use agreement. This is drafted by our legal counsel, Chris Kennedy. It would be between Gary and Kim Hineker, landowners, their farmer or tenant, if you will, Steve Wolf, and the City of Eagle Lake. The purpose of the agreement would be to allow the city to create windrows, as Mayor Norton alluded to. That was done this this winter here, on farmland that they own to help prevent, snow drifting along 598th. And, so in exchange, the Hinnekers are asking that the city perform snow removal on 3 vacant lots in Creekside. And this is similar to, the agreement we put in place to be able to haul leaves to a site that is owned by Gary Hinneker in exchange for mowing his undeveloped lots. So, that is what that entails. The other, provision of the agreement, deals with giving staff the authority, something in writing that, we can work with Hinneker and his tenant to leave up rows of crop, whether it's corn or, soybeans, and, kind of help create that snow fence. But I would defer to Public Works each year on if they feel it's appropriate, depending on what the crop is. If it's beans and they don't feel that's worthwhile, then we certainly don't want to be incurring any costs. So I would defer to Public Works and what they feel is best on that. But basically, the agreement would cover the 2 provisions. One would be to be able to go onto the property, whether it's the city or Brunder Construction, whoever a contractor is, create windrows. The other one would be able to have something in writing that gives us authority to work with them as far as leaving up some rows of crop in which we would compensate them for that.
Do we have anywhere in here the value of the crops? Like, I just don't want to get into a situation where they think a bushel of corn's worth $500 and we think it's worth $5.
Right. I did ask,
Not that they
Mr.
would do
Wolf.
that, but.
no, and he did not give me a number, but in talking with the city attorney, we wanted to make sure that it's fair, and so the language he put in there for consideration is that the city would compensate the tenant for the value of the crops that are left in the field, and the value of the crops will be determined by the number of bushels left in the field and the sales price for those bushels on November 1st of the year. So tried to put in some parameters so
Yeah.
to avoid a situation like you described where we're,
I think you have to remember too, the price of the bushels, but also the price of the farmer having to re-hook all equipment up and go back out on a special circumstance to pull a little bit out too.
Yeah.
Andrew, do you notice, is there a big difference between when the corn row was in versus what we have now? Like, it's been a couple years since I've seen you guys go and do that in the field, so are you noticing one working better than the other?
I guess I wouldn't say one works better than the other. With the snow, we can get it farther out and make more windrows compared to, corn, we have one windrow and that's it kind of deal.
Yep.
But I think corn would be, beneficial and easier and more cost effective because we wouldn't have to have somebody with the equipment out there to make it. So,
That was gonna be my next question, is if we know what the cost was when we were paying, Steve versus what we're paying Brunder, is it a big cost difference, and worth the farmer's time to wanna do that versus paying to where we can keep pushing it back further and further?
it might depend on the winter too. This winter has been unusual compared to the last couple ones, but I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I want to say it ranged between like $1,300 and $1,800, some of the different years that we paid. And I don't have the total number on what Brunder has charged us. I don't have a tally on that right now.
So just communication every fall with the farmer
Right.
and you guys and Brunder to find out.
Right.
Well, Brunder if need be, but okay.
And I know in talking with the farmer, he said that this upcoming season's gonna be beans, and so in order to be able to have corn, he would have to work with the FSA office, and so he said, let's probably not mess with that. And then I will just defer to Public Works if they feel that the beans would be sufficient to leave up, or if we just go the other route and try to make windrows.
All right, would I would like to make a motion to approve the use agreement between the city and the Hinnekers.
Is there, as far as like us plowing the sidewalks for them, and knowing that if we're telling residents 12 hours technically is what our code says, is that what the city's doing then? I mean, is the city being held to that same 12-hour time frame, being that it's residential sidewalks?
We have some sidewalk up on Creekside already that the city does, and we, obviously can't get to it in the, 24 hours is even a stretch, you know, if the
Right.
storm is on the weekend, unless we're gonna, you know, pay overtime to have, you know, additional snow removal done, things like that.
Right, well, I guess
Well, I'm
guys,
pretty sure the corner Creekside Court gets done by one of the neighbors, and then that, cause I walk it sometimes, and that curve gets done by one of those neighbors too.
The same neighbor,
Yeah,
the Hill Shines, they do the sidewalk on both sides of their place,
yeah.
because it's the only way to get it done.
Really,
right,
the
I
only
guess
one,
that's what I was asking.
yeah, the only one that really would have to probably be done is the one on the west, or the, you know,
So then, is there any circumstances under, like this, where it's more beneficial for us to work with residents to help? I mean, it's our obligation, but if they can get to them sooner, especially rural areas that might be heavily trafficked. I know from having to scoop some other areas that get heavily trafficked, once they're stomped down, you're done the rest of the winter. I mean, it's glare ice, but it finally does melt a little bit. So I don't know if that's something, I know the city usually doesn't try to do, but in this circumstances, knowing that our public sidewalks sometimes go out 24, 48, even a little bit more based on how much snow and how often we get it. Are we gonna get resident complaints if they're not? Well, no, because the residents are doing it for us.
yeah, I don't see an issue on this at all.
Okay. Didn't ignore everything I just said. I'll make the motion to approve it.
Thank you. All right, so motion made by Councilmember George, seconded by Councilmember Steinberg. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Can I also note, Jennifer, we should probably say a nice thank you to the Hinnekers for doing this. Does everyone want to take a couple-minute break?
No, I'll go home.
All right. Next item, Planning Commission CUP recommendation for Fox Meadows housing development.
Great. Mayor and City Council, a public hearing was held at the December 19th Planning Commission meeting to consider an application for a conditional use permit from Troy Schramm in the area in the Fox Meadows housing development that is zoned R4 for the eightplex structures. Mr. Schramm intends to construct 13 eightplex structures in the part of the development that is zoned R4, which would total 104 units. A conditional use permit is being sought for grouped housing consisting of a total of 13 buildings. Each contains 8 units to be located in the plat of Fox Meadows. 3 buildings to be located in Block 4, 8 buildings to be located in Block 5, and 2 buildings would be located in Block 7. Grouped housing projects are allowed in R4 districts subject to the regulations for conditional uses. At the Planning Commission meeting, the applicant had stated that no variances would be required. I did include in the council packet, as I did also in the Planning Commission packet, a handout on conditional use permits from the League of Minnesota Cities. There was no one in attendance that spoke against, or I guess for that matter, in support of. There were no comments received for the conditional use permit in the public hearing. Therefore, the Planning Commission recommends that the conditional use permit application for the area that is zoned R4 in the Fox Meadows housing development be approved. And before you this evening was that recommendation from the Planning Commission. The next step would be a motion to grant the conditional use permit, grant it with subject to conditions, or deny the conditional use permit.
I will say that I have been in quite a part of this during planning and zoning, planning committee meetings, and really understand the need and the change there, and really having the exact layout the way it is for very specific reasons. I support this and don't really have any further questions on it. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the CUP recommendation.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. All right, next item on the agenda is the website redesign. And to be perfectly honest, the way I read your emails, it felt like the website crashed and we were in a terrible place. But I look at our website and it looks perfectly functional, so can you help me understand what's
Yes.
going on?
Yep, you're absolutely
Thanks.
correct. It was taken down. It was compromised. It's not the first time it's happened. I think within the last year, this might be the second time we've had that this has happened. And then working with our web host, Webison, it's able to be brought up pretty quickly. But as I understand it, our current platform that we have is considered obsolete, so we are unable to upgrade it to improve some of these security concerns. So we do need to move to a new platform. So I did get some pricing from our current web host, and the contact is Greg Lee with Webison, and the city's been working with him for a number of years. And basically, he is advising that we move to a new platform, WordPress, now to secure it better. I'm assuming if our website gets taken down again, he can try to get it back, brought up again, but it's just gonna keep happening until we get this addressed. So I did ask him some questions, get a little more background, and the last time that the website was refreshed was in 2016. And he noted that a redesign was done on the website, but it was using the same platform. And but at that time, he was able to update it to a later version. There's no other version right now that we can update it to. So it's like we have to go to something else. And I just wanted to note on here, when you're looking at some of the different pricing, that we do have a $300 annual fee for web hosting and then a $25 fee for the domain renewal. I did get actually three proposals here. 2 are in the packet, and then one council member had recommended a web designer. So I looked on the website and I was able to get an instant quote, and that would be for a WordPress platform. But I just kind of want to explain a little bit why there's such a difference between the 2 proposals that I have included in the packet. So the first one is from Webison, our current web host provider, and he's quoting us $5,100, and basically we would pay that. He'd help us get our website going, transfer information. This would be an opportunity for us to update some of our wording, some of our pictures, and then we, after that, would just continue to pay that $300 annual fee and then the $25 domain renewal fee. Moving on with GovOffice, which I have worked with in some other cities I've worked, they are, they do a wonderful job. A lot of cities use GovOffice. They have a very nice website. They used to have different levels, so you could get like a basic level, and they, I think there was like 4 different levels, but now they've moved to just one level. It's basically like a premium level. So what they're proposing is it's basically an annual startup initial fee of $4,475, and then you'd have to pay that annually, and you'd be locked in with a contract, and so you pay that same amount year after year. But again, you're not really comparing apples to apples because it's a very nice, professional-looking website, but I don't know that that's something that we have the budget for right now. Webison would be just more of a basic. We would get a refresh with our website, and it'd be, kind of a little bit more of what we already have right now. There would be a huge drastic change. And the other proposal I did get is also with a WordPress, and that came in with a base fee. Let me find here. A base fee about $4,400, and then there'd be some additional costs to add some different features. And we do have a lot of pages on our website because we have a lot of different, tabs, a lot of different information that we need to have available on our website. So I think that was helpful to get that quote from the other, I'm let's try to find the name here. The web designer is Barbara Schendel, and it's WYSIWYG Web Design. And I was able to get a quote online today, and that's out of Roseville, Minnesota. So that's very comparable to the Webison, which was helpful because then I feel that their quote is reasonable. But like I said, it's not comparing to apples when you look at the one from Webison or the one I'm referring to that I got today to GovOffice. It's just two different types of, I guess, end products, if you will. So, you know, if the city eventually wants to go with something with GovOffice, I think we start setting aside money in the budget for that. But right now, we're kind of in a situation where we need to do something, and what it would cost us to do 1 year with GovOffice, we could do with Webison. So it doesn't have to be done tonight, but it's something we definitely need to start moving on. And I did not get a chance to look for grant funding. I was gonna reach out to, one thought was Southern Minnesota Initiative Foundation to see if they have anything to help with websites, but this just happened on Monday, and now just hasn't been a lot of time. So.
When it crashes, do you gotta pay an extra fee to have it brought back up, or is it just come all with it?
Is it what now? I'm sorry.
So like when it crashes, do you have to pay him more money?
No, we didn't have to, he doesn't charge us anything, and actually, he's really good to work with. I'm trying to think of the only times we're ever charged is if there's something, I guess new or different we wanna do with the website, but it's pretty user-friendly, so all three of us in the office, we update the website, we just do it ourselves. If there's something complicated, we'll reach out to them, but, you know, we just get charged our annual web hosting fee and then the domain renewal, and that's it.
I will say from personal experience with our office going through the same thing, the city is, our old website looked really outdated. It would crash to the point where we like legitimately just lost it. Like we don't have a website, someone do something quick. So I wouldn't want us in that spot. We are using WordPress, any silly person could use it that just logs in. So I think it's the way to go. You know, looking at the two different quotes, very, very different in price. But looking at the Webison and just checking over some of their different websites that they have built, they are very interactive, they're very nice looking, much more professional than what we can do. And now obviously it's whatever we put into it following that. It's only gonna look as good as we make it look. I just struggle having, unless the GovOffice is providing that much more service for the additional $4,500 a year, I don't see a reason to go to them. I think the other one would be very good and much more user-friendly than what we have. Because I have had new residents come in saying, even current residents saying, where do I find some of this stuff, or how do I get to it, or isn't it on your website with the winter event coming up, or any of that, you know, so I think it's time for the refresh, regardless, and I think I would make the motion to do the Webison just from a cost perspective, but also it still does look professional.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second that. I will also comment that when the website was, you know, when it was published, I don't know how many years ago it was, I thought it was a really, you know, cutting edge website at the time, and you could find stuff very well. Probably 2015 is maybe when I started noticing that format of the website. But I think the website, you know, it served its purpose, but I think it's, you know, with different changes and then stuff, you know, I mean, you have to have mobile format, you have to have iPad format, you have to have computerized format. So I think that that's pretty much the reality of what we're going through. But like I said, I think that the website that we had looked really nice, you know. And
Times have changed.
yeah,
you know?
but times have changed, and technology is different now, and I think that the new website will be a good thing.
Well, and website and social media are its own beast.
It's a whole different thing.
We're always gonna have, in my opinion, the city of Eagle Lake will always have a pretty basic website. Look nice, pretty basic, because we can put our efforts into other areas that are needed.
I was actually going through the GovOffice proposal. I noticed they had the city of Wyoming listed here. So I have one friend who is a mayor in this world and is the mayor of Wyoming, Mayor Iverson. And I reached out to her and asked, oh, so you have this GovOffice. Tell me what your thoughts are. And she said, we actually don't have it. So they don't use it. She said it is a very great tool. It has a lot of awesome functionality, very plug-and-play, user-friendly, but that it is very pricey. So I think until, if ever, we were at a point where we could benefit from all that functionality, why spend the money? So I completely agree.
If we're paying that, then they should be doing it, we should just be sending them the information and they put it on for us.
And that would not be the case because I
No.
worked with
Yeah.
them before and that was not the way it worked.
So I've worked with both Greg and Barbara on several sites. And, yeah, they both do good work. I wouldn't, the Gov one is just something we don't need, you know, it's just too much.
So I know I've made the one motion, my question being with Webison is I would assume that if there's any changes that are more functionality based, we would just get charged a per hourly basis then?
Well, I think what we're looking at here is a redesign, and what's happening is why we're crashing is there's add-ins, old add-ins that we need to get rid of. And the only way to do that is rebuild the website and
Start
WordPress.
over.
So my assumption with both of those would be that it's a redesign and being able to be able to have the same functionality, but with a different look, with either Webison or Wiser. So.
I will say I've been impressed with Webison in that it was a holiday and I was able to reach out and within a short amount of time, he was very responsive and got it taken care of and so that was really appreciated. But we do have the contact us feature and something that Greg and I have been talking about that's concerning is that I don't know if Beth, you're on the part, but we get a lot of junk, but it's stuff that's malicious and they're trying to compromise our system. But our system is doing the best job it can to try to filter that stuff out, but there's stuff that still gets through and it's, so that has been concerning the last couple of months. It's been ramping up that we're very vulnerable.
All right, so we have a motion, we have a second, we have discussed. All in favor of going with Webison, correct? Is that what we're saying this?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? No. Motion passes. Thank you. Next on the agenda will be the added amended item, Resolution 2023-12. This would be resolution appointing Christopher Willett to the Eagle Lake Fire Department active roster. Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Welcome, Christopher. And the next item would be the also amended add-in, the Region 9 letter that I gave you guys, filling a vacancy on the governing body for Region 9. Mayor Oranger was on this commission. I'd be happy to fill it. Happy to relinquish it if anyone else is very interested too. So if we'd like to discuss.
I am not interested.
I think you would be a perfect candidate for it.
Is that a motion?
I'll make a motion to nominate our new mayor, Lisa Norton, to Region 9 Committee.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you all so much.
Since we're talking that, what about Maple? Because I know a mayor was on Maple.
Yeah.
So are you taking over the Maple one too, or do we need to find another person for Maple?
Nope, we can actually go back and look too in the consent agenda. We have all the appointments in there. If you want to take a look, I'm taking Mapo, and then there's just
Oh, I missed Maple,
a
okay.
couple little shifts around, I think that just worked better for everyone. I think you were moving to personnel.
I just missed the Maple one. So when
Yeah.
Region 9 came out, I looked over Maple.
All right, so, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? I feel like I should be, you guys are just handing it off so easily. Motion carries. All right. We are on to city administrator report. I'm sorry, other. Do we have any other? I don't see any other. All right. Floor is yours, Jennifer.
All right. Mayor Norton and City Council, I just wanted to update you on a couple items. First is hiring update for 4th full-time public works worker, 4th full-time police officer, and the community development coordinator position. As you noted in the consent agenda, there was a resignation from our part-time officer, and there had been previous discussion about the 4th full-time position and getting updated at, this evening's meeting. We have gone ahead and posted that externally. We've also posted, today the position for the 4th full-time public works worker, and we have applications have been received for the community development coordinator. So the next step in the process with that position is to work with the COG, and we're gonna review applications and then schedule interviews shortly thereafter. And I would like to involve, personnel committee on the interviews for that position because it's a new position. And then also, I'm kind of still contemplating whether or not we should try to pull in a representative from the Economic Development Authority and also Planning Commission. I'm not sure on how that will work, but it's something I think maybe we should at least, I'll talk to the personnel committee and see if there'd be, what they think about that, just to get some more input. And then upcoming Friday, Family Fun Programming, we'll talk more about this at our upcoming park board meeting. But something that we're trying, this is a new concept, working with Mankato Community Education and Richmond staff, trying to think of some indoor activities that we can get people physically active. Councilmember Roach and I talked with Community Ed in the school and trying to think of ways that we can kind of get open gym back up and running, and we were advised that there's some concerns with just going full-blown open gym, so we're trying to work in some open gym activities, and that's with this Friday Family Fun Programming. A component of that would be some open gym. There was a test run that happened in December. I did go to it with one of my children, and it was fun seeing the kids in the gym running around, playing with basketballs and what have you. They were having a good old time. Some were doing pull-ups, and so that was fun. There were other activities as well. I thought it was pretty well attended. I think there were about 75 people in total. So they're looking at doing about 8 Fridays, and there'd be programming that would be stuff that would get people physically active, and then also trivia, bingo, some makerspace, some craft items. So just kind of overall a good community building, hopefully. It'd be a free activity for the community. And then the next item is upcoming annual winter activities event at Lake Eagle Park. We're also working with Mankato Community Education staff on that. We've got Saturday, February 4th from 2 to 4 p.m. on the calendar. And so hopefully we'll get a good turnout with that and have some fun, get people out, enjoy the cold weather, and just be physically active. And then lastly, our winter newsletter should be printed this week and then going out in the mail shortly after that, and then emailed out, and we'll get that out to residents here soon. And with that, I guess one last thing that's not on my list that was brought up this evening and something that is on my radar that I think we need to talk about, because it was brought up at the last meeting and brought up again tonight, is the 12-hour snow removal that is in our city code. And we just want to try to get something that's reasonable. I know in talking with police chief cop, they don't ever enforce the 12 hours. They're always trying to be reasonable and flexible. But we should probably look at amending that. So if the council's agreeable, we can work on bringing something up at perhaps the upcoming meeting, and then schedule a public hearing to amend the code. I guess my first thought would be just to survey some other cities to find out what's the norm, unless somebody has a specific time frame that you're interested in. But we'll try to bring something back to the next meeting. Thank you.
That all sounds wonderful, as long as there's no new mayor in a dunk tank or anything like that at your winter activity planning.
Well, that's a great idea.
I was gonna say.
No
that's
polar-
nice.
No, that's the polar,
Yeah.
whatever that
I
is.
think we'll have to think
plunge.
of something now.
Yeah. I would love to see the 12-hour thing have a very healthy discussion. I've heard that from a few people, and then I've even heard from a resident who's like, well, the snowplow comes and I clear off the sidewalk, then the snowplow comes and dumps it on the sidewalk, and I'm supposed to clear it again within 12 hours, and I think other
After you
cities
have-
I've seen
After you have a cardiac arrest shoveling the heavy snow that we just had, too.
Right, and I appreciate that we're being fair and not nitpicking at folks, but I also want to make sure we're doing things objectively, right? So I look forward to that discussion.
Okay.
All right, anything else? See here. Council members' reports. Anyone have a report to give?
I have a couple of things.
Thank you.
Just one question or comment, from Joel Radell. He was curious about, roads not being in good shape when the snow emergency was canceled. Just regarding falling short on calling a snow emergency before the roads were completely cleared, and I also had noticed that as well. Which I agree with Joel on when they closed the roads and then reopened and the roads were still not clean. Granted, we had a lot of snow, and Joel also expresses he believes the Public Works is doing a good job, and Andrew, I know that you guys had a lot of, you've had, what, 40 inches of snow? The whole Minnesota snow, accumulation amount in 2 weeks, basically, so, again, it's just, more or less, I believe it was just a question from Joel.
So our main reason for the snow emergency wasn't necessarily to, make everything clean, because obviously it was still snowing that day.
Yeah.
But it was, we needed cars out of the way so we could push stuff back and try to get the streets as wide as possible, because we're losing room. So that was the main reason for the snow emergency. It wasn't necessarily to, the final cleanup, because then,
The final cleanup is still happening because there's
Right.
still so much snow.
right, but, we came back even the next day and we were still,
Yeah.
plowing and scraping the streets and things like that.
I think that, yeah, that helps clarify it. Also, with regards to, the Music on Parkway, I'm gonna be working on getting a informational meeting kinda started to go for that, which I think will probably be in the park this year. Because the water tower rehab is gonna be happening below the water tower for the first 2 months of the series. So there'll be more details forthcoming with that, and I think that's everything I have.
Thank you. Any other reports?
Mine's less of a report and just thanking both Public Works and our police department with this massive amount of snow. They have been doing a stellar job getting roads as clean as possible for people to get out. People are always gonna complain, and you just shake your head and understand. But with the amount of snow we've had and the wind and the blizzard stuff, you guys have done an amazing job, doing as much as you can anyways. And keeping residents informed and pushing snow back, hauling snow away in cul-de-sacs, all that. So thank you guys, and please thank your departments too on our behalf for the hard work that's gone in the long hours.
Yeah, I don't think there was a moment where my street wasn't plowed. It was just, yeah.
Yeah, and to echo that, I have a daycare provider who lives on an off street, and she also commented the fact that the streets were plowed much more in advance than she had expected before. So, with all that snow, again, that's another kudos to the Public Works Department.
And even where I watched one of your guys, I'm not gonna name names, but people always complain about getting snow thrown in your driveway, and he specifically moved the blade or lifted or adjusted, so the least amount of snow will go in the driveway. So they are doing everything they can to be as, respectful to homeowners as they can. There's a lot of snow, snow's gotta be.
I think we need to write in somewhere that if you're on the council, you get your driveway plowed by the city.
Is that after you help us clean up?
No, that's what the police chief's son is for with his four-wheeler.
All right, any other council member reports?
This is an offbeat idea. I think that, I'm not sure where or what or how this would happen, but I think that, I've noticed a lot of different communities that have community centers and buildings and functioning facilities for events in communities. I think that's something that we may want to entertain looking at as a task force, not saying we're going to break ground tomorrow, but I think a task force should be important. Again, we're 3 miles from the largest southern Minnesota retail center. There's just things that I think we could think about. I know that entertainment venues are very highly sought after for weddings, for dances, for any kind of thing that you can think of. Things are booked out. especially after the pandemic. And they, not that it would be a money-making adventure for the city, but I know that these ballrooms or venues do a really good job at, they also make money. So it could be a nice thing for the city to have, especially here on the east side of Mankato, where there's, where there could be an opportunity for a classy place, a nice community event center, you know, something along those lines. And I think a task force should be looked at to maybe start to determine what could be in Eagle Lake, on an eastern, you know, again, looking at it as a part of a regional part of the metropolitan statistical area of Mankato, not just an Eagle Lake event center, but like bringing people in. I think that would be a goal to look at in 2023 here, to get a task force of some sort, you know, put together in place to kind of do some research and calculations and numbers and stuff. So that was another thing I've been thinking about.
I absolutely love that idea. I can tell you we have YMCA membership simply to go use the pool on occasion because there's no other pool. And our kids now, where do they go? They go to the park.
Yeah.
That's about it. In the winter, they're in our houses, which is where we don't want them, right? We want them out.
Yeah,
So any sort of a community
a
center.
community center with a pool, yeah.
I would love to see it.
I think sit down and John and I were at the strategic, the SWAT meeting, I think it was like 4 of us that were there. So I think ahead of any of that is revisiting the SWAT notes from Region 9 and then revisiting our goals that we all put forth 2 years ago. And then kind of plugging away on it. Because we're talking community centers and Dollars Club, and we're talking
Oh, yeah.
treatment facilities, and we're talking road, so funding has to come from somewhere. So I think we have to just put a hard plan now that we have all new council starting the year, figure out what our goals are and tackle them on the same page.
Yeah, when you think of the benefits for not only the families and younger folks, but for seniors too, to have, silver sneakers classes available, to have facility available for meetings. I mean, obviously we have this building as well, but there's a lot of potential benefits there. And the revenue from rentals, absolutely. So I'm glad you brought that up.
And I also know on the back end of things with the school district, in the sense of that I've worked as a substitute custodian at the school, they don't want to have events in the building. I'll just say that I'll say that straight out. I will, I mean.
But they are being very receptive to what we have coming, and.
I think it's the district that, I mean,
Right. The school is
it's not
pushing,
the,
and the principal and the district is being a lot more receptive.
which I think they should be. Yeah, I think they should be.
You'll notice a change in that pretty substantially coming up, even to the point where we're trying to engage the adult open gym, adult pickup basketball, adult stuff, not just child and kid oriented. So,
Yeah.
Pickleball.
yes, it's multiple.
But that's where an obstacle would be, the obstacle of the school and the district and all those people would be just bulldozed out of the way if we looked at more of a bigger visionary, you know what I mean? Yeah.
I just look at it as I'm a taxpayer to the school, let us in,
So
Yeah.
task force.
so.
I love it. Sounds great. How about a massage chair too, so you guys can relax?
Yeah, we just want to do ours, we don't care about the rest.
All right. Announcements. We're almost there. Sorry. Hey, if I don't learn to do this by the book now, I'll be sloughing off forever. So announcements, next regular city council meeting, February 6th. EDA is on January 26th. Next park board meeting, January 12th, 6:45 a.m. Can I just mention this right now? The EDA meeting and park board meetings, I would love to attend. But that's when I feed breakfast to my family. If it works for everybody else, great. But I just feel like we are really making it inconvenient for any member of the public.
I would just
Just show up.
In the sense that we are involved in a lot of stuff when you have children and you're working full-time, it's really hard to get out of work. Or to say, someone else get my kids, like tonight, Grandpa, get the kids so I can go to my meeting. So 6:45 for the last year has worked for pretty much everybody in the work.
Well, do you get any public attendance?
Even if we had it at 8, 'cause we had it at 8, no one came.
Okay.
In my own mind, I mean, we even have guests that come from out of town and they're there at 6:45 when they need it, when they want to attend. So I would push back a little bit on that 6:45 where you might lose people
Yeah.
in the sense that.
You're on it, I'll defer to
Well,
you. I
yeah.
just said, oh my gosh.
I also don't think that 6:45 is a conducive time for having creative flow, you know, like, let's come up with these
Depends
great
on-
ideas. How
How much coffee do you need?
I'll put money on it.
I don't know, if you get up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, you're raring to go by 6:45, so, no, 6:45 works for me on the EDA, and I think it works for the board, it's just, you know, my schedule is, I leave town by 7 and I'm back by 9, so, you know, if it would change the middle of the afternoon or whatever, I'd have to drop off of that board.
I would too.
Okay, I'll just finish the announcements then. Thank you for sharing that. I do appreciate it. Regular planning commission meeting, January 30th. So Jennifer, then will our newest applicant be on that then? And then do we still have a vacancy at that point? Okay. So as of right now, I'm the backup plan currently? Okay, if in need for quorum, but we are still looking for,
Yes.
okay.
I
Thank
did
you.
add that in our city newsletter here, just another ploy to try to, or plea, not ploy, a plea to please join.
Great, thank you. All right, you wanted to do the motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, I make that motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.